Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the San Fernando Valley Climate Reality Chapter meeting. This is May 13th, our May meeting on the second Tuesday of the month. And welcome, whether it's your first time here or you've been joining us every month for years. If it is your first time, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. We always like knowing how people found out about the meeting or where you're coming from. I personally am in Woodland Hills, so one corner of the valley, but we do have people who call in from not just all over the valley itself, but outside the valley, neighboring counties, sometimes other states even. So if you're new to our chapter, go ahead and say hello and let us know where you are. And while we're doing that, we would like to begin tonight's meeting as we usually do with a land acknowledgement. We are honored tonight to have our member Judy Glass reading our land acknowledgement. She is a longtime member of the board of ACLU of Southern California, a member of the Plato Society, which is a senior learning community. She was a professor of economics. And these days, she leads our Environmental Justice and Rights of Nature pod. So Judy, would you please do us the honor of reading the land acknowledgement?
Yes, certainly. A land acknowledgement is a formal statement that recognizes and respects Indigenous people as stewards of this land and the enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. It acknowledges the history that has brought us to reside on this land, the colonialism that is present in our current systems, and calls on us to be mindful of our own present participation in it. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Tangwa, Kish, Tataviam, and Chumash tribes.
Thank you, Judy. And if anyone tonight is calling in from other territories, you can go ahead and name those in the chat as well so that we can recognize them too. That said, I would like to turn it over to our outreach coordinator, Vivian Deutsch. Vivian, would you give a little welcome?
Yeah, I just welcomed all the new people in the chat and welcome to everybody else, all the not so new people. And I always do my little blurb. If you're here, you're going to be invited to all of our meetings and you're going to get all of our information from our chapter. However, we are connected to the larger Climate Reality Project that was founded by Al Gore. And that is worldwide. And if you go on the website, if you haven't done this, and you join as an official member of our chapter, then you have visibility to the bigger climate reality. That includes the trainings, which are free. In fact, everything is free. Joining on the website doesn't cost any money. But you just get a lot more information and a lot more cool stuff to do and to know about. So I am putting in the chat right now the link that you can do this. And you just have to make sure that where it asks you for what chapter you're joining, you put down San Fernando Valley.
Perfect. So if anyone is interested in officially joining our chapter, that is the link to do so. And we welcome all comers, whether you live in the Valley officially or not. All right, so it is time to sit back, grab your beverage of choice. We have a treat tonight. So David Rosenstein is here to talk about green banking. And he's an expert on this because he's currently the co-leader of Third Act, SoCal's climate and clean energy team. And that includes their banking on our future task force, which is how they assemble their resources to help their members align their financial lives with their values, which is something we should all be doing. But he's pretty involved in a lot of stuff. He's also on the steering committee of Resilient Palisades. He's one of only 2 members on that 16-person committee who didn't lose their home to the Palisades fire. But he's, currently focusing on rebuilding the Palisades community to be a model of resiliency and sustainable building principles. So that, of course, should ring some bells based on the meeting that we had 2 months ago. He had a great career. He's now retired, but he founded, ran, and sold Intex Solutions, which was a commercial service company that prided itself on being a model of environmentally and socially responsible practices and was the first company in its industry to become a certified B Corp. But he got involved thinking about climate when he read Bill McKibben's book, The End of Nature, and finally understood, the impact that humans were having on climate. Fortunately, he was able to thank Bill personally for writing the book this past summer when he spent 3 hours in jail with him in New York after being arrested at a Summer of Heat nonviolent demonstration protesting Citibank's funding of fossil fuel projects around the globe. So Citibank, as we'll hear tonight, is one of the dirty four, the big four banks that are the top fossil fuel funders. And that's what we need to be moving away from. So thank you for doing the protesting work, David.
You're welcome.
He's also a proud alum of UC Santa Cruz, go Banana Slugs, and worked in the summer for the U.S. Forest Service. So he also knows about fire suppression and forestry management. He has lived in Santa Monica Canyon for 38 years, and all three of his children work in fields related to the environment, health, and sustainability. So he's clearly got a long history of doing this work, and I'm really excited about hearing from him tonight. David, why don't you take it away?
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. You did leave out the part about my heritage in the Valley, having graduated from Millikan Junior High School as the Athlete of the Year and carrying the American flag.
A true Valley native.
And then proudly getting kicked out of Grant High School in 1968 because my hair was too long, which clearly is no longer an issue.
Damn hippies.
But yeah, thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here tonight, and I'm excited to speak to you about the subject. My presentation is wide-ranging, a little eclectic, and very personal. As Sharon said, I am a recent climate refugee, having evacuated my home in Santa Monica for a month, and working very closely with my associates at Resilient Palisades, nearly all of which have lost their homes. My goal this evening is to give you an overview and get you thinking about how you might want to engage with the topic of withdrawing your financial support from the fossil fuel industry, and to provide you with some ample resources should you decide to act. Years ago, I began to ensure that my investments were not supporting the fossil fuel industry, but I began seriously working on the what was in my wallet portion of the project just 2 years ago. At that time, when I became very actively involved with Third Act, we were protesting at the four dirty Wall Street banks, Chase, Citibank, Wells Fargo, and B of A, who provided a massive amount of financing and enable the ongoing expansion of fossil fuels. The irony, if not outright hypocrisy, of leaving a dirty bank protest and then buying lunch or making another purchase using a Citibank or other dirty Wall Street bank credit card was not lost on me, and I began making changes. I thought, given what I know, my resources, standard of living, concern about the future of the planet and the future generations, including my children, if I wasn't willing to make changes and step up and more fully live my values, who would? I'm just like you, a concerned activist trying to make a difference and align my deepest values with my actions, and I'm not a financial professional making or qualified to make specific recommendations to you. I can, however, get you pointed in the right direction for more specific advice and how to act. Figuring out what to do as regards our money and finances is an individual, intensely personal decision that varies widely from person to person, depending on many, many factors. It can be easy or complicated as you choose to make it. It can be gradual or a long process. I hope to give you a pathway to do something. There's that old saying, the person who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones. Sharon, in your leadership of this chapter of Climate Reality, will be talking after tonight's presentation as regards next steps in offering and implementing this program. I plan to speak for about 25 or 30 minutes and leave 15 or 20 minutes for questions and discussions. And will also provide my contact information if I can provide any additional help for you. So let's get started. And you are my second PowerPoint presentation in my life. The first one was 2 weeks ago at a synagogue in the Valley of environmental activists. And so any technical glitches that occur, I apologize for in advance, but here we go. Okay.
This is where we would take our family photos for every important event, right here at these bricks. Just imagine an overflowing wild garden behind us.
There have been bees buzzing by.
Yeah, the front door was right here. That's where my grandmother would have her chair. Where it was. Then that was the walkway up to the kitchen door over there.
The oil companies in particular have known for decades and decades about climate change, and they bear a huge responsibility. A lot of people that I know that have lost homes can't afford to rebuild them. And this is an industry that's making billions and billions of dollars and has no legal liability. And they should be helping to pay for the damage that's been caused because of their business model and what they've chosen to do.
So when you get a picture of my mural, I painted it with my best friend when I was 18. Her name is also Sarah.
The burden of rebuilding should not be on us. It should not be on the taxpayers. It should not just be on the insurance companies. It needs to be on the bigger entities that contribute to climate change. I want to see our state hold the elite polluters more accountable for what they are allowing to happen here.
So I was very excited to hear from Sharon this afternoon that you guys are already deeply engaged in this issue. And I'm also really excited to hear about the demonstrations you've got going on. We've got membership that I think would be excited to know that there are assembly members that we could show up, and I'm going to promote to my team your demonstrations, and I'm sure we can get some of our people out there because we're deeply engaged in this issue, and I'm glad to learn more about what you're doing. This is I think one of the things I hadn't said is that I'm going to be providing links for all of the information I provide. This is something you probably already have, but there will be a link that'll be sent out, to the Polluters Pay Superfund Bill Toolkit. You may already be involved with this and have access to it, but you'll get it again. And thanks for being engaged with that. So I'm preaching to the choir to mention that climate change obviously is related to the current situation, and all of us know very well that that the consequences of climate change are likely in the near future to worsen, and this isn't the first or last time we're going to be dealing with this. So just to give you a idea about the profitability of the industry, By the time I finish my presentation on ExxonMobil alone will have generated nearly $3 million more in profit. Their profits last year were averaged $64,000 a minute, $337 billion for the year. And these are, companies that are being financed by the financial institutions that we're hoping to disconnect from. Of the planet's largest funders of the fossil fuel industry, 4 major American Wall Street banks are in the top 6, each having provided more than $30 billion alone in 2023. They are, as you know, Chase, Citibank, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America. If you've got money, that money is giving off huge amounts of carbon. If you've got a considerable sum, it's producing more carbon than anything else you're doing. It's just sitting there in the bank, spewing carbon. Depending on how much money you have, your bank account is 2 or 3 or 4 furnaces chugging all day. It's a trio of Escalades idling forever in the drive, or 6 or 9. Without knowing it, you're setting your money on fire over and over and over, and that fire is filling the atmosphere with greenhouse gases. Nothing could be more important. Bill McKibben. So, what can we begin doing as individuals and together to stop funding climate chaos? Let's see. Okay, here we go. So the good news is in the last few years, the resources to help people move their money away from the fossil fuel industry have become much more expansive, robust, and user-friendly. More and more people are divesting and making the choice to not fund the fossil fuel industry. Third act, in conjunction with Rivers and Mountains Green Faith, and This Is What We Did, provide most of what you need to accomplish this in one web portal and connected links. These resources range from individual workbooks, search tools to find, investigate, and compare banks, credit unions, credit cards, and insurance companies, and an ability to schedule individual or group counseling with peer advisors. Tonight, I'm going to show you some of these tools. Now, just so you understand what is available, we won't be doing any deep dives into this information. That's for a follow-up session. But we'll give you an overview of what's available, and I think you'll see that there's plenty of support to make the changes, make any changes you want to. Sharon, as I mentioned earlier, will be sending out a list of the resources at the end to everybody, and I will also provide my contact information, and I'm glad to answer any other questions you might have. So here's a sampling of some of the resources that are available. There's a graphic as a possible pathway to moving your money with all of the steps from figuring out which bank would be more appropriate to what to do. One of the important steps near the end is sending out sample letter and notifying the financial institutions why you're making the change. We even have links. We just had a meeting with some of the people from Climate Action Santa Monica that have made changes, and we've sent them information about who at Wells Fargo and Citibank to send their letters to and how to communicate with the bank managers once you've made changes. And so it's really a turnkey operation. We have a lot of information about credit cards. And again, it can be, these dives can be as deep or shallow as you want. There's many, many possible options. I'll give you a few examples. This is actually a credit card comparison by fossil fuel investment. It shows all of the best credit cards to get that are not doing any financing of fossil fuel exploration or infrastructure. And it also gives you all the other information you need about deciding which one might be most appropriate. What your late payment fees are, what the reward programs are, any other vital information. So, the resources really kind of go as deep as you want to go to make the decision that seems appropriate for you and your family. Another area which we don't think too much about is home and auto insurance. If you insure your home or auto with Liberty Mutual, Travelers, Allstate, Geico, State Farm, or other major insurance companies, some of that premium payment is likely being used both to insure and finance the excavation, production, and distribution of oil, tar sands, coal, and gas. And through these programs, you can learn how to find mutual insurance companies that do not insure or finance fossil fuel projects. Climate change is really, climate change catastrophes have completely upended the ability of insurance companies to accurately calculate risk and losses. For homeowners, the industry is in complete turmoil, and we have less and less options as regards home insurance. And in some cases, as in my case, I'm lucky to have insurance at all. And I think we all know people that have been losing insurance because of the risk of climate catastrophes, particularly fire in Southern California. But we do have options, a lot more options in terms of auto insurance. So that's something to be cognizant of. And it is really an important area. Liberty Mutual by itself both insures and invests in fossil fuel projects in amounts that are so large that it would make them the number five leading fossil fuel enabler on the banking list. So again, we've got a lot of resources here where you can go online and you can see if your insurance company is part of the problem or part of the solution. A critical part of the web tools that we're going to provide you is called Mighty Deposits, and it's a really dynamic tool to both find and compare banks and credit unions. So here's a screenshot of one of the pages, and I'll show you an example a little later, but you can see in the middle of the page, it not only gives you a lot of choices if you're interested in banks or credit unions that are women-owned or above average in housing lending or small business lending. You can also sort through these resources using zip codes or cities. Just a general search on this web tool shows 108 banks in LA. That's all through the whole LA area, Long Beach, Anaheim. 108 banks that are financial institutions that would be a lot more appropriate for people that think, believe, and value what we value. One of the banks I'm going to talk a little more about that I've been using is Beneficial State Bank, and I've pulled up this screen just to show you what kind of a deep dive you can do. You can go on to their, follow the website, seeing the impact data. 58% of the money is invested in communities. That is 56% more than the industry average. How much they're putting into housing, how much they're putting into small businesses. And so, again, you're able to go as deep as you want in this stuff and really find appropriate institutions for yourselves. Another tool that's available on the website through our partner, This Is What We Did, is a Move Your Money workbook, which is just a personalized workbook in which you can individually go through and a step-by-step basis, fill out the paperwork, be guided on an individual basis through the whole process of making changes. And another opportunity is individual individual consultations. This is a picture of Michael Richardson, who is the founder of Rivers and Mountains Green Faith and a really, really important voice in Third Act. And if you do a individual consultation or a group consultation, he might be somebody that you're speaking with. And in fact, Sharon and I have already reached out to him, and he's indicated a willingness to work with your group on a group or individual basis. And we've kind of fostered through Third Act. We fostered about 30 to 40 people through this process so far in the year that we've done it. And we've had everybody from one of our members had an enormous amount of Vanguard funds, and Michael spent about 45 minutes, and a couple of the other Third Act people were on there to hear how it went, and helped her talk through which Vanguard funds were the appropriate ones. And we've had other people that that have very complex financial situations that we've referred to financial advisors. There's a whole list of financial advisors. Being here in Southern California, we know some of them, but they're all over. So people with complex financial situations that unlike our one member that wanted to understand everything about every Vanguard fund that she held, we have financial advisors so that can help. So I'll give you a couple of views of my sort of idiosyncratic view of what to do and how to do it. I think the first one is first steps is just saying no to the big four. Wells, Citibank, Bank of America, they are made, they are built to fund the fossil fuel industry. That's what they do. When I went to, if somebody that wanted to do oil exploration or mountaintop removal had come to me and asked me for money, I'd say no. But as soon as I put my money into Citibank, they go ahead and lend it to them. And so there are a lot better choices. And if you do nothing else than get away from these institutions, you've made a difference. You're doing less harm. That even means if you were to just open an account with, get an American Express credit card or Discover credit card, you're doing less harm. There are a lot better options than Discover or American Express, but just taking this first step is a critical one. And it takes time. It takes time from the time I started, and it's an ongoing process. I had a lot of Citibank points that I wasn't willing to give up. First thing I did is I got a Green America credit card, which I used for my wife and I have one credit card we stick in the drawer for recurring expenses, which is probably the one gets used least. And we got that and put the cable bill on that, and we put the newspaper and the all newspaper charges and our recurring monthly donations. And I got and I'll talk a little more about Beneficial Bank. And then I got a Beneficial Bank card, which I started using their climate card. And I kept the Citibank accounts open for a while until I used those frequent flyer miles up. And so it can be for some people, it can be a, kind of long drawn out process. Another thing is, in general, credit unions are the answer. If that's a choice, if that meets your needs. I just pulled up, asked for credit unions in Woodland Hills on one of the search tools, and five of them popped up. Just in Woodland Hills alone, and you can see what the analysis is, what they do with low-income communities, how much of the money is based in Woodland Hills, and you can do a deeper search and see what the, what other services and, services they offer. So, credit unions in general are exemplary and share the values that we have. Let's see. As I said, I've begun working with Beneficial State Bank. Beneficial State Bank is a California-based bank in Oakland. I also had a business account with them, and I got to know the vice president, Southern California Vice President Manny Berrigan, very well, and he's been very, very supportive of people that we've referred to him. The reality is, that let's see. I have to say in all candidness that I was spoiled by the level of service and perks related to my Citibank and Chase cards. Though some of my third act colleagues have not found the transition challenging, at times I have. The responsible banking sector is playing catch up to the major dirty banks and have not had the resources, especially with those provided by higher spending people of means, to provide the same levels of service and benefits. We're we're trying to change the world, and I consider Beneficial Bank a partner. When I have problems, I call up Manny and I say, Manny, the credit limit you want to give me is a third of what I had with Chase. What's up? I mean, you can't get in high income people to come if you don't provide the same levels of service. Or Manny, why is it taking so long to, post a credit? I'm used to paying my credit card bill the day before it's due, so you don't have my money any longer than, you should have it, but it takes you 4 days to post it. What's up with that? And, these banks are, these responsible financial institutions, they're works in progress. In my experience, and as I said, some other people in third act have not, wouldn't tell you the same story, but my experience is I have to take a deep breath, and say, I'm trying to change the world. I'm trying to strengthen these institutions. I'm trying to make them better, and I'm a partner in doing that. And if not me, who? This is the Beneficial Bank Climate Card is the main credit card that I use. And the card is issued, Beneficial State Bank is a B corporation, which is wonderful. And the credit card is issued directly by the bank, which is different than a lot of credit cards. I continue to refer people to Manny, and he knows that I'm giving this presentation, and he knows that I'm putting his name and email in the chat. So if you decide to work with Beneficial Bank, you're welcome to give them a call and tell them how you got there, and you're also welcome to reach out to him when you have issues. They just and I've done that often, and they really appreciate the climate activist community. And then the credit card, the Beneficial Bank credit card is different because it's offered directly by Beneficial Bank. Other credit cards are affinity and branded credit cards. And what that means is that the institution whose name is on the front is not the actual bank providing the credit card. Now, the Green America credit card that I have for our recurring charges here at home is sponsored by TCM Bank, which is a bank that specifically does that, to do partnerships, and is a fine bank to work with, but you have to be careful. Up until recently, Sierra Club actually had an affinity credit card, which was sponsored by Bank of America. They no longer have that. But I went online today and checked. The National Wildlife Federation has a branded credit card that is still using Bank of America as the bank. And so, you can look on the back of any of these credit cards and see who the actual financial institution is. One major campaign that we've got going at Third Act, along with our partners, many partners, including Stop the Money Pipeline, is we're trying to get Costco to switch. Costco has a banking relationship with CitiCard. Their branded card, Costco credit card, is a Citi card. Unlike Walmart, which has actually a much better credit card with a bank that is not a fossil fuel underwriter and enabler. So we've got a very active campaign, and we've been putting a lot of pressure and done a lot of demonstrations. In fact, that the rest last year and that city summer of heat actions were all at the Citibank. The day after I got arrested, and I didn't get arrested the second day, but with our demonstration, there were a lot of people dressed up as Costco hot dogs that got arrested. And it's some pretty great videos of seeing elderly Costco hot dogs handcuffed and being led off to jail by the New York Police Department. So, something else that's going to be a link in the information we sent you is the dirty little secret of credit card rewards programs. Something for nothing, right? Well, not so much. Quote, New York Times, not exactly nothing. Credit card perks for educated, usually urban professionals are being subsidized by people who have less. In other words, when you book a hotel room or enjoy entry to an airport lounge at no cost, poor consumers ultimately are footing the bill. For those of you that don't want to know about that, you probably have heard too much. Of those that are interested in learning more, there will be a link to the full article. And in closing, something that's been a really valuable tool for us in Third Act is really sharing our stories with each other. This is a copy of our Third Act blog. Our we have members that have move their money stories, sharing information about what they did and how they did it. And, that's been just a huge positive impact in sharing that information with each other at meetings and in blog posts. And, hearing from people what their experiences are in building trust has been really a powerful tool in getting this going. And then again, I'm glad to be associated with you guys. And if there's anything I can do, email me or call me or text me. And at the bottom, and I'm glad I included this slide since the big boss Phil's on the call. We're volunteers and not financial advisors, and we're legally prohibited from giving financial advice. So if anything goes badly, and let Phil know. That's what he's there for, right, Phil? So anyway, thanks for your time and attention, and thanks for taking this on. It's a lot to process, and it has a big emotional impact on our lives and how we think about our patterns and consumption and how we spend our money and what we're used to doing in terms of our travel and, points and all. But, that's the reality of the financial situation we're in and what it's doing to our planet. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David. So we're going to open up the floor for questions. If you do have a question, please go ahead and enter it in the chat, and we will begin passing them along to David. I'm uploading now the file that has all of the links to the tools that David shared during his presentation. So go ahead and download that to your own device if you want to have that later. But I will also be emailing it out to all the attendees of the meeting afterwards. So if you don't want to download it right now, you'll get it in your email tonight or tomorrow. So I'm going to start with some questions, David, because I've got questions coming out my ears already. So you made the good point that, the name on the credit card isn't the only thing to pay attention to. You need to pay attention to who's behind it. But I'm wondering about things like one green fund within a company or one green account. Like Wells Fargo, advertises that they have a climate checking account. Is that for real, or does it really not matter if you tell, a company that is funding fossil fuels that you just want to be part of, this one little aspect of it?
Well, that's a good question. Part of the answer to that is, their profits are their profits. And they're profiting, they're profiting from the account. And so they're not saying to you, Sharon, we respect your opinion, and, whatever money we make from you, whatever fees are, generated, or, are not going to be going back into, fossil fuel enabling. That would might be also, and I'm gonna again, I'm gonna defer, that's my opinion, but I think that would have, I think that's a question if you get with Michael Richardson next month that I would, I would ask him as well. Also, I think personally, I think there's a power in just cutting the ties and saying, I no longer choose to do business with your, you may have, you may have a, 1% of your business in, green energy, but you have 99% that's not. And I choose to, you know, I choose not to do business with you for that reason.
Right, definitely. I see folks asking a little bit more about the beneficial bank that you mentioned. Does it have physical branches? Are there any here in Southern California?
Yeah, well, I think I believe there's only a few. There are not a lot of physical branches. I know my son is with Beneficial Bank, and he actually went out and visited with them, and I think there might be in East LA someplace. I've never been to the branch, but no, they're not a lot of branches.
And so is that something where you can apply for everything online? Can you apply for a credit card online? Can you open an account online?
You can do anything. I mean, you can do all of it online. Yeah, I've kind of gotten a lot more, with it. I mean, I've recently in the last, year or so started, started doing, digital. I've kind of embraced the digital world and doing digital deposits of checks, taking pictures of checks and depositing them. And, if you need, but that's one of the things, that's part of the powerful search engine. You go in and you can say, I want places with branches, and where are the branches and how many are there? And, if that's an important criteria for you, you'll be able to, you'll be able to find that.
Okay. I see Don Price is asking, what is the impact on the credit score if you switch banks and credit cards? I know people worry a lot about their credit score going down, especially if you've, had the same credit card for 20 years.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know the answer to that question. I know it's a concern, and I mean one of the benefits of being in third act is I just at the point in my life I'm not kind of too worried about that, but that's been a concern for younger people, in terms of canceling a credit card and changing banks, and it's a real concern, but I can't address that. You might ask Michael that as well.
And Don, I know that, the way that those credit scores are calculated is somewhat obscure, but I think another option is to, keep your existing credit card, but not use it on a monthly basis if
Yeah.
you are concerned about losing that long-term credit history, as it applies to your credit score. So that would be another option, right?
Yeah, I think that's true. Especially if you have a credit card, if you don't have a credit card that you're paying an annual fee on, there's no harm in keeping it, or even using it on using it on a nominal basis. I mean, I have in my wallet now, I've got the beneficial bank card. I've got a bank called Salmon Nation, which is a affinity card through a TCM bank, which helps with salmon fisheries up in the Northwest. And then I've got my backup card is a Discover card, which I use sometimes. Sometimes, some of these beneficial bank has been quicker to, in my opinion, to trigger declined purchases because they're concerned about them. It's as I said, I like them a lot and I use them a lot, but it's I kind of keep a credit card in the back of my wallet that I feel is really, really, really reliable, that I know I'm not going to have any kind of problem with.
I think that takes us back to last month's meeting. For those of you who were here a month ago, we had a meeting, focused on imperfect environmentalism, which was basically saying it doesn't have to be all or nothing, right? Steps in the right direction matter, even if, it's not a whole hog thing. So I think the idea of, getting a credit card that you use for most of your purchases while still keeping, your old credit card just in case is still a huge move in the right direction, right?
Yeah, and for me, it's been a gradual process, and like I say, it just, given my values, it just felt so good to start making the change. And once you kind of know what these banks are doing, I mean, it doesn't feel very good to use the cards, and just to be making progress and small steps consistently taken has been my modus operandi.
I appreciate that. I think for a lot of us, it may be hard to, transition to veganism entirely in 1 month, or to green banking entirely in 1 month. But hey, I've got oat milk in my cup of tea right now. I will have you all know I made the switch after last month's meeting. So I'm drinking the oat milk. We'll see what I can do about the banking next. Vivian's asking about safety deposit box. If there's no physical bank, huh? Well, that might be something you use a credit union for, right?
Yeah, that was an issue for me as well. I had a safety deposit box, and yeah. Now now I'm not giving you my home address, but I just switched to a home safe. I mean,
That's another option right there.
but again, that I think I haven't used that as a particular search tool in the in the application as to whether that's listed. But again, it's there's compromises to be made, and everybody's got to figure out what's essential and what's not.
And have you found, what about ATMs? Terry's talking, pointing out that the beneficial bank partners with other companies to use their ATMs for cash withdrawals. Have you found that to be a reasonable network?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you don't struggle to find banks that you can use their ATMs?
Correct. I have not.
Great. Okay, Diana is asking, someone approached Costco about switching from Citibank. Who's doing that? And when when do you think it might happen, or do you think it might happen?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. They actually have a fairly long-term contract with Citibank. They have had Stop the Money Pipeline is the name of the main organization, and we actually got something that came out today, which was a little disappointing. We've actually had a lot of Third Act members have signed up, have become small shareholders of Costco, so we can go to the shareholder meetings and raise our voice. And Costco is actually a really good company. It's they have good values. They were recent in the last few months where they had a shareholder initiative. Somebody had raised an issue about getting rid of their diversity and equity and inclusion programs, and Costco said that's who we are. That's what we do, and that's who we are. And one of the reasons that we've been trying to put so much pressure on Costco is because they do care about this kind of thing. I mean, well, a lot of us have gone in and spoken to store managers. And, Costco is one of those companies. If you go to a Costco and ask to speak with the manager, it's probably going to be somebody that's worked there for 20 or 25 years and started driving a forklift, or working as a cashier. And so, we think they are very vulnerable over the long term to, making changes. But it's going to be a long haul, especially given the current administration, and the Securities and Exchange Commission just came out with some new rules that make some of these shareholder initiatives more cumbersome to try to get traction. But yeah, but we think that that's a real vulnerability for Citibank, and one of the largest retailers in the world, and so we're be glad to have other allies involved with us on that.
Yeah, we'd definitely be interested in supporting that effort. And Costco does seem like a good target. As Zena is pointing out, Walmart may have a better credit card, but they're worse on other fronts. Whereas Costco would generally seem to be a company that would be supportive. So seems like, there really is an in there.
Yeah, and they have. We've met with there's a new president in the last couple of years, actually, somebody that's worked there for 40 years, again, started in the warehouse, and he's actually had meetings with us.
Well, that shows a reasonable willingness to listen.
Yeah.
Going back to the sort of network question, Cedric is asking about accounts that can be used internationally. Have you used any of your sort of green banking cards in an international setting?
Yeah, I have. I've used the beneficial card, and yeah, and there are and it's a very nominal amount, and but I've used it, and there have been some very nominal transaction fees, but again, it's kind of a trade-off, and if you need encouragement about some of the additional cost, read that New York Times article that to get a deeper understanding of what really provides the financial underpinnings of the perks that people like me get get, and it's a choice of we don't want to compromise our lives. We want to live good lives and rich lives and lives of abundance. But, we need to decide where the lines are in terms of our ethics and our lives of privilege.
I was very intrigued by how you phrased that on your slide, because I hadn't really thought of that as an environmental justice issue. I mean, credit card points, how is that environmental justice? But, you're making a direct link saying that, these banks are funding fossil fuels, and if we are benefiting from that in a way that isn't accessible to underprivileged communities in the same way, then yes, credit card points do become an environmental justice issue.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, my credit score is not as high as it is not higher because I don't carry any balances, and I pay my balances every month, and I don't have revolving credit. People have higher credit scores that that can't afford to pay off their credit cards and are paying 18 or 20% interest and pay regularly. They get better credit scores. Those are the customers that the banks want, because that's where they really make the money. Well, where does that money go? Well, it goes to underwrite my privilege, and the perks that they give me, and the points and all of that. So it's it's complicated, but it is a social justice social justice issue.
Yeah, it really is. Cedric is asking, does Visa versus MasterCard, any of those, sort of big names matter, or is it the bank names that we should be looking at on the card?
It's the banks. It's the banks.
So like the Visa, MasterCard, those aren't the funders of fossil fuels?
Correct. Yeah, correct. They're not. Yeah, it's really the banks. So if it's that credit card, I think that Green America credit card is a Visa card, but it's TCM Bank. So it's really the financial institution that matters.
Okay, that's good to know. So we don't need to, make sure we're avoiding Visa. We need to be careful about the funder behind it.
Correct.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about what you think is the best way to notify the bank that has an impact, right? So you mentioned sending a letter. Is, closing your account in person at one branch going to have more impact? Like, what's the best way to use what we're going to do to get their attention?
Well, I think it's all of the above. In fact, I'll tell you a story. I don't know if Phil's still on the line, but when we were part of our Citibank campaign was, we were closing accounts, and Phil and I went into the Citibank branch on San Vicente Boulevard in Brentwood, and there was a young Latina. We asked to see the manager, and we had both been Citibank cardholders. We went in and said, we've loved the personnel of Citibank dealing with you. The service has been great. The people have been nice, but we're concerned about climate change, and we're concerned about the kind of world that our children and grandchildren are going to live in, and we can't. We feel we can no longer do business with Citibank anymore. And she was probably 32 or 33. And I saw that, I talked about the impacts of climate change. And I saw that she had a picture of young children on her desk. And she said, "I'm so glad that you came to talk to me. I'm so worried about this issue. My son's swimming pool that he relies on to go to, swimming during the summer had to close because of the water shortage. And I'm on a regional committee with other Citibank managers to help inform corporate policy, and keep in touch, and thank you for coming in and talking to us." And we've had a lot of conversations very, very much like that. We've gone into lots and lots of that's been part of our campaign, is going in to do that. And so those are seeds that are being planted, and I said to her, I said 20 years ago, if I was sitting in front of a Citibank manager, it wouldn't be a young Latina woman. Change is possible. Things change. And she said, "Yes, you're absolutely right." So, that doesn't happen all the time, but it's happened a lot. And we feel that we're planting seeds, and we also feel, that's the same point of going in and talking to these Costco managers. When we talk about, with all of the good things that Costco does, many of them are just shocked to find out about what Citibank does and the kind of relationship. And so, we're planting seeds. We're planting seeds and watering them. So the answer is yes, you talk to the manager. When we go in and talk to the Citibank managers, we ask for the names and contact information for the district and regional managers, and we send an email to them. And then when we've closed the account, we'll send a letter to the corporate people as well. So the answer is all of the above.
I think that's a good reminder that, the employees of the bank are not our enemies, right? I mean, they may be people who are conflicted about this as well, or people who, just haven't thought about it, but would be supportive if they did think about it. So it's really an opportunity to make a human connection,
Yeah.
rather than, approaching with anger.
Yeah, we've had that at a number of branch in La Jolla. A young woman, another young woman of color, we spoke to her and she said, again, I'm so glad you've come in to talk to me. I know about this campaign, but I was nervous to bring it up with my manager on my own. But now that you've come in, I can do that.
Just on a brief aside, I don't know if you saw it, but in the last week or so, The Guardian has been running this series of articles about sort of digging into why climate change, activism isn't having more success. And they're citing these studies that say, in a broad survey worldwide, 89% of the population wants to see more climate action. But most people think that other people don't want it. So when asked, 89% said, yes, I want my government to take more action. But the majority is like, oh, but everyone else doesn't want it. And in fact, a large majority said that they would be willing to give 1% of their annual income to fund climate change mitigation efforts. But again, they didn't think their neighbors would.
Yeah.
And it really made me wonder how much of it is just that we're not talking to each other about this. That, we're not having the conversation with the bank manager about climate change and making it okay for everyone, in the room to be admitting that they're worried about climate change, because it turns out 89% of the world is.
Yeah, good point.
All right, a couple more questions from the chat before we let you go. Kat is wondering if Third Act has email templates that we can use to send a message to our bank, or a letter template.
Yeah, we do have that. Yeah, we have that, and we also have the address. The names and addresses of the corporate officers, and obviously the local people you'd have to do on your own. But yeah, we provide those. We provide those templates as well.
Okay, great. So that will make it easier. We'll have something to work from and places to send it. And one final question here from Cedric. Would you say that having assets as index stock, like index funds, is worse than keeping it in the bank, or hard to say? You did talk a bit about choosing Vanguard funds carefully, what's the lesser of two evils?
Well, I'm gonna defer that question to Michael Richardson next month. That level of expertise is a couple of notches above my pay grade.
Okay, and we do have to reiterate that David is not a financial advisor, and we can't blame him for anything that happens from this moment forward.
And it's gotten easier, but it's so incredibly hard to figure out. I mean, if any of you have gone in to look at the holdings of green funds, green mutual funds and green offerings, I mean, you go in and you actually look at what they're invested in. It's like, holy cow, I don't want them to have my money. So it's imperfect. We do what we can, and we make the best decisions we can, and we keep getting better. I mean, these Green America card that I have, one of the problems with the Green America card, that just kind of preparing for this meeting, is I realized that that Green America gets only 0.5% of whatever I spend. Whereas if I had another kind of another kind of card and I got cash back, I could actually afford to give them 1% of what I spend. So am I going to make a change because of that? I don't know, but it's imperfect. It's a work in progress, and but the tools are so much more powerful and dynamic and useful than they were even a few years ago. And there's a lot of support out there for you to do whatever whatever you're up for doing.
And I really appreciate that folks, at Third Act and your partner organizations have put so much work into creating these tools and making them accessible to everyone, because I know that I did think about, you know, making all these transitions some years ago, and I started looking into it and got so, you know, overwhelmed and confused, I kind of gave up. So that's why I haven't done this yet, but I am definitely looking forward to diving into these resources and making some real changes.
Yeah, and like I said, if you get stuck on anything, you know, there's actually, you know, Michael Richardson, and there's a number of people through his organization, and this is what we did, that are just terrific, patient, and wonderful. So, you know, there is actual human being that one can connect with if that's necessary. But thank you for your time and interest, and I'm thrilled to learn more about the organization, and I'm glad to be partnering with you. And yeah, we'll get out to some of your demonstrations and meet in person.
Yes, we definitely look forward to working with you further. And now is the fun part of the evening where I'm going to ask everyone to unmute yourselves briefly and thank David for a wonderful presentation. We appreciate his expertise.
Thank
Yay!
you.
David.
Thank you, David.